I've said it before, and I will say it again. We have not gotten enough sequels, remakes, reboots, prequels. We need more. Hollywood, give us more. Of course, what is better to remake than 1994's The Crow? A cult classic, perhaps considered by some a superhero anti-hero movie. Before the genesis of Marvel and DC's universe and the modern superhero epic we know today. So Hollywood, and not out of ideas, has decided to remake this today in 2024 with Bill Skarsgård. But let's forget about that. Let's go back and talk about a movie with lots of Hollywood tragedy associated with it, and whether or not it stands the test of time. I've seen this movie before. I am shocked that Barata Zach, who is joining us today, had not seen this movie because it is right up his alley. At least I think it's right up his alley. Rembo, you hadn't seen this movie, so this is two fresh eyes. I had not seen this movie in many, many, many years. So is this a movie worthwhile for people to go back and check it out? And let's start off with Barata Zach. Barata, you are a big Tim Burton guy. You're a huge 89 Batman guy, which a lot of the movies that came out after that, leading up into Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, took a lot of notes from that 89 Batman movie. And I feel like this definitely does that. And I'm curious if you enjoyed watching The Crow.
Yeah, no, I most certainly did. I too felt like it was definitely a movie that should have been on my in the scene category, but I'm really glad that I got a chance to watch it for this. I really liked it. Considering how violent and unpleasant the actual material of the movie is, it's a lot of fun to watch. I enjoyed the action. I thought Brandon Lee was great. And unlike comic adaptations of today, it didn't seem overly concerned with pleasing an audience with its like aesthetics or humor. That's kind of my general summary. But I really enjoyed it. You know, as for how much I'll go back to it, remains to be seen.
How
Sorry,
fitting.
guys.
A wild cat appears.
Rembo, you having watched this movie for the first time, this is a movie that predates kind of your, I would say, X-Men 2000, Spider-Man 2002. There was Darkman, which was a Sam Raimi, Liam Neeson superhero movie that took place before the modern superhero movie. This movie predates that, or predates. Wait, Darkman was
Darkman was 1990, but I was thinking
1990.
about Darkman a lot when I was watching this.
So this came after Darkman 4 years later. What were your thoughts on The Crow?
It was fun. It does feel like a Batman knockoff, but just, yeah, much more violent and it's, a Batman, but more gothic tones. It's short and straight to the point. It doesn't mess around much. It's like the beginning of the movie is just they've died, and then you're just right into it. Like within 10 minutes, he's resurrecting, and gives very little like lore. It's just the girl's voice being like, sometimes a crow brings people back from the dead. It's just like, that's it. That's all.
Right. He's resurrecting within 10 minutes, and then he's resurrecting for 30 more minutes.
So that's the thing is I was like,
which I didn't hate, but hey.
That's the thing is I was watching it. I was like, how long is this flashback scene going to happen? It just felt like it was going on and on and on. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you got to give him some backstory and give the character some meaning for you to care about, right? So, but I had fun with it. It was interesting. There's a lot of really interesting things about this movie that I had like little bits of information stored in the back of my head that while I was watching it, I was like, oh, there's that thing, that, and the other that I get references to other things that we'll get more into in a minute. But overall, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I think it's more of a one-time watch. I don't necessarily think I need to go back and see it again, but maybe.
I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I love all the aesthetics of this movie. I love that it is very, you are right, Rem. It is very much of a Batman feel. However, the comic bookness, I've never read the comic. I'm not familiar with how it looks, but immediately you can just see the framing when it opens. Ernie Hudson is the cop, and he's looking down, and you see the body on the floor, on the street. The way it starts and the lighting, the red lights, it just feels very much of a world that you're a part of all of a sudden. Um, and I love Brandon Lee is great as this anti-hero. The villains are all terrible. I love the 90s music. We get a lot of rock and roll feel that is like it's perfect. And the way that these movies are done today, if it was some shitty movie like say Spider-Man Homecoming or something, where it's like here's the Ramones playing as Spider-Man swinging through the swinging through the streets. And it's like, why are the Ramones? But no, this is 90s rock and roll playing in a movie that feels very 90s. And so it is so atmospheric. The action's great. It to me ages much better than Darkman. Darkman is
Yeah.
doesn't quite age as well, and part of that's because Raimi is very some of his techniques don't always translate the best. But this movie I just think is a great, what is it, 104 minutes or what have you,
142
minute
minutes.
runtime.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Zach, you mentioned previous to this recording that you're a big Bruce Lee fan, and so we all know basically that Brandon Lee died tragically on set. You did some pre-research. What is kind of your how do you view his passing away, or how it affects this production?
Well, I think you can really feel it in the edit. So yeah, again, not having seen it, but having it been on the bucket list and knowing a little bit of the lore behind it. Then I did read up on it a little bit. I'd read about it a little bit before they kind of added on to Bruce Lee's biography, but that was many, many years ago that I read that. And there's really only just a couple lines that I can recall. But as for like how it affected my viewing experience, I really think the frenetic editing, part of me does wonder like what the editing would be like, if there'd be so much cross-cutting and all that. I haven't gotten a chance to see like how much of it was filmed with a body double. I do know that there was some pretty like innovative CGI techniques, but for the most part it feels like when the story is centered on him and he is the main character, that you get a lot of close-ups or enough to kind of familiarize yourself with the character. I just wonder if there would be so much, again, frenetic, choppy editing in a way. I haven't seen Brandon Lee in anything else. I thought he was excellent. I don't know how much of it was done with the stunt double, but obviously in amazing shape, and just the fight choreography and what's asked of him emotionally within those scenes. I was really impressed, very genuinely impressed.
I do think he does a really good job for what he's given, where it's a tough ask to be like, we need you to anchor this character, but we're giving you just a couple flashback scenes where all that happens is you get murdered, and there's like maybe 2 or 3 scenes of him like romantically engaging with his fiance. And so then to like just take that and basically build your entire character's like motivation off of that's tough. But I feel like he did a pretty good job, and I think he makes it very interesting, and he has his character has some layers and some depth. He goes between like his badassery to his jovial joking, kind of like
kind of trash talking with the villains a little bit, playing with them.
Yeah. And so then that's like the first little bit of, I've just been doing, I just want to talk about the fact that he's so much like, I did not know how much this character clearly influenced Heath Ledger's Joker.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
In my mind, when I watched this, I was like, oh, like this is it's weird, eerily similar. Not only do you have 2 characters that are like notable, or 2 actors that play really noteworthy characters followed by an untimely death, but the makeup very similar. All the white, the pure white with just the lips and the eyes. He has these moments where like when they're shooting at him and he kind of dances away in this kind of silly manner that feels very Joker-esque. He even has a line about chaos and anarchy.
Yeah.
Disorder, chaos, anarchy. Now that's fun.
The idea has become the institution, boys.
Introduce a little anarchy. Upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos.
Yeah, that one stood
I
out
was
to me
like,
too.
I've seen that before. And so I didn't go back and look at what Christopher Nolan and Heath Ledger took, but it seems very apparent to me that this like really influenced Heath Ledger's Joker in a really cool way. So rewatching it, I'm like, oh, this feels like it feels, and even the hair, like it's the kind of stringy, wet hair, all of it together really just feels like a almost like a mock draft of what a Heath Ledger's Joker would have been. I thought, and that was just like, that was something that I just kind of kept with me the whole movie. That was
Sure.
really interesting, entertaining.
Well, I love it so much because I have 3 titles that I think like there's a very clear direct line in terms of its influence, and I'm sure there are many more. But again, I was very virginal for this film. But I want to go to my last one first, which is Batman Begins, and it's so. I mean, the point has been made. The Joker is obviously like Batman's ultimate, inverse, or whatever. But I just wrote the movie felt like a darker and in some ways more realistic take on Batman slash Bruce Wayne slash Batman. Even the fact that he has to relive his trauma to like get into character, so to speak, which is really what that opening montage is like him reliving, right? And then his contentious yet symbiotic relationship to an understaffed police department that has like 1 or 2 good insiders, and then he's like a tormented loner grappling with his own trauma and exercising those demons in a pretty unhealthy way. I mean, he's obviously getting the bad guys and all of that, but I guess there's one of a few reads on that, but like I think the Joker and Batman are mirrored so well in Chris Nolan's Dark Knight. So I just think that's kind of funny because I was thinking of Batman Begins specifically and the rainy aesthetic, the way Gotham is depicted, just these kind of earlier comic book films. I don't know. I don't want to hog the mic so much, but that kind of made me laugh.
Yeah, no, I did think of Batman Begins, and there is, and I wonder how much is intentional, but it does feel like this character is a hybrid. And I was trying not to think of it this way because I'm not sure when I look at Brandon Lee's face in Paint, it's like, am I just thinking of the Joker because of the visual similarity? The stringy hair obviously brings it much closer to Heath Ledger, but then also it feels like a mix between Batman and the Joker, where you have the chaos and you have the vengeful bloodlust that Batman does not have, but you also get there is what he's ultimately doing is taking care of getting rid of the bad guys, getting rid of these murderers, and the guy that essayed his girlfriend that he meets up with, and they get into a fight, and it's very 90s, but it was like the guy throws the knife at him and it's spinning.
That scene was awesome.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
fight
and it was
scene, and
just
then
very
the
much.
fight scene with him and Gideon, the shop owner. Sorry, please go ahead.
No, it's
They
all
were
right.
just really well choreographed.
Yeah, and it was
I love the super over the top ADR and
Yes.
the sound effects. Everything is like it's super like there's some scenes where they really lay it on thick, and it is funny. I just noticed it.
yeah, the clasping of the hands on the knife and then throwing it back, and then he takes the other one and it cuts away, but ostensibly kills him. A lot of those, and that's the revenge. There's movies about revenge where it's a grounded, like, revenge gets you nothing. It does not bring anyone back, and that's true. But this movie does feel good when he's taking out the trash. It just feels good because he's enjoying it, and you're enjoying it, and it's a comic book movie, and that's the other movie that this movie to me connects is Sin City. It felt so much like an extended Sin City story. The way everything's framed, Tony Todd looks like he's been ripped straight out of a Sin City comic with the glasses, and the black jacket, and the way he acts and his mannerisms. Zach, did you get any of those Sin City
Oh
feels?
yeah, I mean, just from like a cinematography, like it seems like Robert Rodriguez really took a lot in terms of stylization from just this film overall. It's aesthetic. I don't know, like a lot of and Sin City is sort of Robert Rodriguez in black and white, literally. But it's interesting because I was thinking of both his Mexico series and some of his kind of earlier stuff along with Sin City. I think the way the camera pans through, these scale models or miniatures and then through, a set. And even though it does, I didn't look to see if it was filmed in Pinewood or, the same sets or even in England as the Batman films. It seemed to open the space up a lot more than Burton's Batman films managed to do, which I really appreciated. I caught some really good use of early CGI in like just with the way the camera will go through the city. And so from operation and just general aesthetics, I saw a lot of Robert Rodriguez in and out of Sin City. But that's absolutely.
There are it's a great cast of characters in this movie of various level of scumbaggery for the most part. Rem, whom stands out amongst the rogues gallery? Is there anyone that stood out to you, or are they all kind of a part of the same palette?
No, all three of the four initial henchmen. Three of the four are the same. One is like super meth brain, where he can barely talk. And then the other three guys are kind of all the same, just like standard evil, like henchmen. Gideon, is that his name?
Yeah.
The shop owner?
John Pilato.
John Pilato, who's also who I immediately recognize from, of course, The Freshman, which is super random. Sorry, Zach. Have you ever seen The Freshman?
Yeah, with Matthew Broderick?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Very Danny DeVito. It's hard to split both those dudes since they're both shorter status, but also the chubbier guy that talks a lot of shit, that is very magnetic. And it is one of those things where that's the only way you can make it, is to figure out how to be that magnetic when you're on screen, because the roles you are offered in Hollywood when you are that frame and you look like that are very limited. So that guy is like maximizes every minute that he's on screen. He's very, very good in the Coen Brothers movies that he's in. And you're just like, man, he just comes off like just like he's trying, like just the biggest used car salesman, East Coast guy. Like,
yes, absolutely.
You can smell the cologne on him almost like through the screen. Like you can, anyway, great actor, great character, gets a great send off death in this. He's wonderful.
The boss, which I don't know what else I've seen him in other than Nope. He's the random director dude that shows up to film the monster in Nope. I don't know he looks familiar for something else, but I don't know I can't put my finger on it.
He's also in Alien Resurrection.
Yes, Michael Wincott.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Wincott. Yeah.
Oh, how could I forget the amazing Alien Resurrection?
Fantastic.
With Ron Perlman, right?
Yeah, he's like Ron Perlman's boss. He's sort of like in the same hierarchy of thugs. You know who the street toughs reminded me of in this a lot, and this is like calling back to some of its influences, is RoboCop. Like it doesn't have the same level of like distinction on like the final big bad or who's like. RoboCop just has maybe a little bit more, who your villain is, as opposed to like this whole cast of characters. But the way they interact with each other, that felt a decade back, or 6 to 8 years back. Felt very RoboCop, and then some of the Batman 1989. But just the constant bickering and yelling and driving through the city. I think this movie does take place in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, too. They mentioned one time. So maybe that's what made me think of it. But that's that their dynamic felt very RoboCop-y.
I always think of the Family Guy joke about, and I can't remember the cutaway exactly, but basically they make a joke about the interracial gangs of 80s like movies.
Right.
Oh no, it's a multiracial TV gang, including white guys.
Well, what do we got here? Let's beat him up, but not because of his color, because that doesn't matter to us.
And so it was like always funny, and you go back and watch any of those movies, it's like this eclectic group of Die Hard. Like, that Die Hard has like one black guy, but like there's those different, like RoboCop, I believe, but this movie is like there's different, like, there's the gangs back then. It was like, all black dudes or all white dudes or all Latinos or whatever. And in like the movies, it's like there's one of everybody. It's like they're very diverse and inclusive in gangs back in the 80s and 90s.
We had been talking a lot of like, for backward and forward rather about this movie's influence. So I mentioned Batman Begins when we were talking about kind of comparisons to Batman and the Joker earlier. I just wanted to quickly mention the other two that immediately popped in my mind following this movie. The first one you could probably guess was The Matrix. Just the rooftop scenes, the camera operation, Brandon Lee's all black form-fitting getup.
That when he's at the beginning of his transformation, when he's running across the rooftop, it is very Trinity.
Oh my, dude, frame for frame. And this was one of those, so yeah, The Matrix. And then the other one, I feel like it's been touched on a little bit, but Seven came out the following year in 1995. Maverick, you had talked about sort of like the music really reminding you of just what a 90s piece it is. I mean, we do get Nine Inch Nails like within the first 20 minutes of the movie. That's, David Fincher's go-to. Not in Seven, but in a lot of movies there. No, actually, Trent Reznor did do the music for Seven. And then just the visual depiction of the crime-ridden city. Again, I know it says Detroit briefly, but it does feel like any city USA, but not on either of the coasts, just the constant rain. And yeah, I mean, it really felt Fincher-esque in that way. And I think The Matrix and Seven are so intertwined, in terms of like their visual stylization. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's I was trying to watch it fresh and all that, but the kind of the comparison I made to watching this movie is it's like experiencing something that is influence of something that you're love and are still familiar with. Like, oh, if you love Metallica, you'll love Iron Maiden or Motorhead. You listen to that and you'll be like, oh yeah, there it is. Or if you like the Killers, you like Depeche Mode, and you just hear those things. Or if you like Radiohead, you like the Talking Heads. But it's not necessarily as fun to go back and listen to how profound those influences may have been on what may have been a more tighter distillation, but it is super enlightening. And I feel that way about, this movie. We mentioned several of them, but particularly Seven and The Matrix. I just was like, wow.
Fun fact, I forget his name, but Brandon Lee's stunt double who fills in for like of the extra scenes that he wasn't able to do is Keanu Reeves' stunt double in The Matrix.
Wow. That is really definitely a fun fact. That's awesome.
I saw that when I was looking up, like I was trying to get the details. I'm like, okay, how did he exactly die? Because I remember thinking, I was like, did he shoot himself? Like, I wasn't exactly sure on the initial details when I first, heard about this 15 years ago. And then when in looking that up, I saw that fact. And I was like, that's very fun. And he does not. And when you look at the guy, you're like, okay, yeah, he looks a little more like Brandon Lee than he looks like Keanu Reeves. But yeah,
the aesthetics of the world, and that's why it's in this Goldilocks. I don't even know. Goldilocks is the wrong term, but it is in this era of before it's so heavily influenced by other things other than say Darkman. But it does feel like it's its own story, its own world, even if it's heavily influenced by Batman. It's not like, all right, we want to make a superhero movie. How do we make a superhero? All right, and it's not post 2000 when everything just kind of had to measure up to whatever the last big hit was. If you're X-Men, that's the first big one, and then Spider-Man's like, all right, how do we do that? And then after that, so you constantly get this like just kind of recycling of the same thing, slightly making it better perhaps. But this movie really does stand on its own, and I think it's definitely worth watching to see, as Zach pointed out, like the Matrix influences and things that it did that other movies would take from. And it would be curious if this movie didn't exist, how would the ripple effect with Sin City and the Matrix and modern superhero movies, or Batman movies, the Nolan verse specifically, how would those have looked had this movie not been around? As of the recording of this, and the movie launches tomorrow night. But as of the recording of this, there are no reviews out for this for the new movie, so that pretty much guarantees this movie is going to be trash. Because if you don't have reviews coming out at least 2 or 3 days beforehand, and you're waiting until there's no embargo, people have to go see it by themselves. Most likely, this movie is going to be terrible. Probably bomb at the box office. So need out of sight, out of mind. Can always appreciate this 1994 movie. Final thoughts and ratings. Rembo.
I give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it's not perfect. It's a cool period piece for the 90s, and I like. I think it has very creative use of violence and cinematography and special effects of the time. For a posthumous performance, I think it's like for Brandon Lee. I don't know if I've seen Brandon Lee in anything else, but I think he does a great job as the lead and being the number one character that you're following through the entire 90+ minute movie. And all the little side characters, the bad guys, everything all works really well into like a seamless like A to B story that feels really satisfying at the end of it.
Yeah. Or A to Z. I mean, he does go all the way back in the grave.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Well, wouldn't that be A to A or I don't know. Yeah.
A to B to B.
Yeah.
A to B to Z to B. A, B, Z, B.
I agree with Remy. I mean, I don't have much to add. I would go 77.5 out of 10 or whatnot. I would almost push into the 8 just because I would recommend for folks that like action movies and really enjoy like the, in my mind, really quality 90s cinema, The Matrix, 7, just to name a couple. Seeing its influence on that, whether I'm projecting that or not, it makes it worth it. But just on its own, I would, go 7.5 out of 10. Really, really, really solid, really unique for the time and the genre. But maybe just because it's not such a pleasant watch. Like, I don't know that I'm going to throw it on, with friends or anything like that. But definitely an educational movie for like just movie lore, don't have much to add. I agree with Remy though. That's how I'd rate it.
Yeah, I'd go the IMDb scale 7 out of 10. It's a very enjoyable anti-hero superhero movie. It is really cool to watch the practicality, the sets, the smoke, the atmosphere of this movie really does ring true. I mean, the difference between this and Sin City is that Sin City is so stylized, and I love Sin City, but it's so stylized, and so everything is mostly green screened, and there's not really that immersion the way in this movie when he's jumping across rooftops. Even though it's set, you do feel like it's a real place, and the stunt works great, the action, the guns, as Remy said, the ADR, the sounds, and the very visceral nature of the world.
I do love the endless clips. Every gun has a 400 magazine. Like, so crazy. No, just like endless. No changing of cartridges. None of that.
Yeah, it's great. It's well worth watching. If you like movies and you want to see kind of a movie that's very influential, that took influences and then gave influences to the next generations. Very much a stepping stone in cinematic history. And that's Last Pick.